With my film being a social realism film, I wanted to kind of display some of the elements of it. So I decided on the theme of domestic abuse within relationships. And within the film, there's two different characters, and one of them is abused by their boyfriend within the film. And I decided the name of the character would be Rosie. And so I was thinking about sort of different things that could relate to this. And I decided upon the name of Kicking Roses, so it sort of demonstrates her as the sort of delicate character within the story, and also kind of relates to the domestic abuse that she suffers at home and things like that through her relationship. I wanted the setting to be as much like social realism as I could, so I wanted mine to be a very kind of dark, gritty sort of atmosphere. So when I was filming the outside parts with the character Rosie walking through different places within the park, I was very lucky to get snow, because I thought this kind of gave off a sad, cold vibe, and as you can see on the screen, it's very sort of dark atmosphere, which relates to social realism because it's usually very gritty and dark. I wanted the characters to be very kind of modern, so I just decided when the actors showed up to wear whatever they thought necessary, because in social realism, I think that it's very important that they get a kind of naturalistic feel for the characters. For example, in This Is England, the clothes they wear would relate to 80s, such as Doc Martens and skinheads. So I decided just to make my characters wear like what they would wear every day in modern day society, because this gave up a naturalistic modern vibe. I also decided with the more darker characters, such as the character of Ben, he would walk around with his hood up, because this kind of gives the impression that he's sort of a dangerous character. And when I do the close-up shot of his face, it kind of demonstrates, the evil look on his face demonstrates that he's going to be the bad character within the story, and that he obviously has something to do with the sadness of the main character. One of my favourite shots was a panning shot of my character Rosie, because the setting and the snow and everything around her sort of is demonstrated within this shot, and the sort of clothes that she's wearing that show her sadness and how she covers up very well to cover up any, like, for example, what's happened to her and any bruises she's got, so it sort of, or illnesses she has, so it sort of demonstrates how sort of like this character is within the setting, and it also demonstrates a very social realism kind of atmosphere, because it's very dark, it's very gloomy, and she feels sort of secluded within this sort of society and atmosphere. Within my first edit, I had the titles with just a usual plain black and white background, which I kept for the second edit because I thought it gave off a very sort of serious vibe, so it kept up the serious sort of atmosphere, because I wouldn't want to have sort of pink and green writing, because it would destroy the kind of gritty atmosphere that I wanted to create within the audience. I also chose this style of writing in my second edit because I wanted it to sort of keep serious, and I didn't want anything that was too bright, but I also wanted it to be quite bold, so it stood out to the audience who the different actors were and which characters they were playing or representing. I decided, in order to set the story up better, to have different short little montages demonstrating flashbacks of her life. So for example, in the image you can see there's a shot of someone smashing glass with sepia, which is the character of Ben, which you sort of realise later on in the scene, and it sets it up in this part because we haven't quite been introduced to the characters, so we sort of wonder, she's obviously suffered some kind of abuse, so it demonstrates elements of social realism, but it also demonstrates sort of what's going to happen to her later on in the story, and that the themes are going to be abuse and there's going to be something violent within the story. And it also sets up the different characters because, as I've said, we've had the shot of Ben and there's also a shot of her friends, so it sort of sets up the different kind of aspects of the scene, of the opening sequence in the film, and what's going to happen later on. As stated, with the montages, I thought they would set up the sort of storyline really well, and it kind of, the genre is introduced very well, because I thought I'd use sepia, and for example the shot of the train demonstrates sort of like the longing to run away, and real aspects of life, things that we face every day, and I thought this would represent social realism because it kind of represents things that happen to people every day, so people get trains every day, but it also kind of gives off a gritty vibe because train stations are usually related to sort of violence and graffiti and things like this, so I thought that would give off a very kind of social realism sort of vibe. Most of the characters are introduced for a brief period within the montages. For example, the character of Ben smashing glass and using violence, and just the characters of her friends just sort of standing by. But the main way these characters are introduced are within the opening sequence of her life, Rosie's lifestyle. So when she's sort of walking through the park, we meet Ben because she crosses him and he gives her sort of that evil stare, so we get the idea, and it says within the speech, that evil stare, he saves for me. So it sort of demonstrates that he's the bad character within the story. And also we meet the characters of her friends later on, and she sort of states how they're always there for her, and she also says that they tell her it's not healthy, so we get an idea that they're her very close friends and they kind of know what's going on with her and Ben. The main special effect I used was changing the colour of the montage scenes, because I wanted to demonstrate a difference between real life and what's a flashback. So within the montage scenes where she's thinking of Ben and her friends, I changed the colour to sepia because I thought black and white was used too often, and I wanted this to sort of be original and stand out more. So I still wanted to keep that dreamy effect, but I also changed it to sepia because I wanted to give off the vibe that this was a flashback. This is something that she can sort of relate to, and it also gives it more of a special sort of vibe because it's more of a montage and you can tell that she's remembering this. And it's something that she can remember.